Lindy Lee, welcome to the show.
Sean, you're the best. So happy to be here.
Thank you. Well, we have a lot to talk about today.
Let's do it. I'm ready.
You sure?
Totally ready. Born for
Got
this.
some big news, some names I heard you're going to drop.
Whatever you want. I'm here 100%, even if it's ugly.
Perfect. All right. Well, we'll start it off with a introduction here. Lindy Lee, recognized as a prominent political strategist. You've raised millions of dollars for the DNC and for both the Biden and Harris campaigns. You become an outspoken critic of the DNC and its wasteful spending and misguided policies. Recently appointed to the Trump-Vance inaugural committee, raising money for President Trump's inauguration. Now you work with RNC leadership, and you are the youngest woman ever to run for Congress in American history. When did you run for Congress?
When I was 24. Oh, man. Didn't go well.
What made you want to run for Congress at 24?
I wanted to save our country. It was actually, Sandy Hook happened on my birthday, and it became my life mission to ensure that another 5-year-old would never be murdered in the classroom. Obviously, I didn't complete my mission yet.
So are you anti-2A?
No, I'm not. I'm anti 5-year-olds getting killed at school.
I think
everyone should. Exactly. But the right to bear arms is in the Constitution. That's not where my argument is. My argument is these poor babies.
So I'm actually curious, what's the answer in your opinion?
People like Adam Lanza shouldn't have access to guns. He was clearly off his rocker, and his mom should have been more responsible. She should have done everything she could to lock up the gun. Parents have a responsibility. This is not about restricting the Second Amendment. This is about making sure that people who are clearly lunatics should not be accessing guns. It's common sense.
Do you think the parents should be held responsible?
In this case, yeah, because Adam had a long history of mental illness. Mm-hmm. So this is not a leap. The mom should have been cognizant of the risks, but she was very slipshod and haphazard with the way that she handled guns.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got a lot of stuff to talk about.
I'm not a San Francisco liberal I'm not a Dianne Feinstein who wants to, come to your house and take away your guns. That's not where I'm, just to be very clear.
That's good. Because I'm not going to give them up. But we have a lot of stuff to talk about. The most important subject, or the one that I want to talk about the most, is, Biden's cognitive decline.
I have so much to say about that.
I can't wait to get into that, but I just have one thing I have to know.
Yeah.
Whose cocaine was in the White House?
Oh my gosh. Can I just say that I am friends with members of the Biden family, one of whom actually lives down the street from me. I think it's easy for people to figure out who does. I mean, I live in Philadelphia. Okay, fine. Ashley Biden lives in Philadelphia. I did hear from someone close to the Bidens that when Hunter said he was sober, he actually wasn't sober, and this is when Biden was still president.
So it was Hunter's coke?
I can't say for sure that particular bag of coke was his, but I'm just saying that when he claimed to be sober, he wasn't sober.
Oh, okay. I think if it was Hunter's, it probably would have been an empty bag.
But I'm just saying, he had this mirage of the fact that, he pretended to turn the leaf. He pretended to be a good man now, but a lot of that was just a charade.
Yeah. Hunter definitely likes to party.
He certainly does. And going to that, I want everyone to know that at every event, he was in the front row sitting like he was royalty. And a part of me was just like cringing inside because he was waltzing around like the entire world didn't see him prancing around naked with prostitutes and snorting cocaine. I just like, does this guy have no shame to be at the White House in the hallowed halls of the people's house, pretending like nothing happened, pretending like the world didn't see him in a bathtub?
Yeah. I think there was the past 4 years, a lot of disgusting stuff that happened over in the Capitol and in the White House. I mean, there was who was that guy? That guy that was...
I asked one of your staff if I'm allowed to curse in here, like fucking in Congress.
Yeah.
Disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. It's like, it embodies everything that's wrong with the Democratic Party.
Yeah, that, and then
And then the topless man, let's just say a man on the south lawn of the White House.
yeah, that was
An absolute disgrace.
crazy, man.
Disgusting.
That was crazy. I was actually in D.C. when that happened. Not at that party, though. Not my type.
I would have questions if you were at that party.
But and then
I'm usually invited to stuff. I wasn't invited to that party.
Before we get started, when we first met, what happened on Joe's podcast? So he came out and said something about the Harris.
He came out this morning, or
interview.
The clip was released this morning. He basically exposed the Harris campaign as a liar, as though we didn't already know that. But so a book is coming out that states that it was Joe's fault that Kamala didn't go on his podcast. Joe basically came out and put the lie to that. The Harris campaign wanted to blame him for it not working out.
Why? Why do they want to?
Because they realized it was the biggest fuck up to not do the podcast. She should have been on your show. She should have been on Joe's podcast. She should have been everywhere instead of building $100,000 fake set for Call Her Daddy.
Yeah. We invited her. We were talking to her people, and it could only be an hour. Then we had to discuss the topics first, and it just got to the point where I was like, look, why don't you just give me the outline and I'll do that interview? Because I don't care what you give me. I'll make it work. And then you know what I think it was? I think it was the Brett Baer interview, which honestly, to be honest with you, I didn't even think it was that bad. I mean, there was a couple parts, but I thought she handled it okay. And but after that, it was dead silence. We had Newsweek put something out. We had the Washington Post put something out, and it just turned into crickets. But
I don't understand why it's so hard for her to answer simple questions. I don't understand why she has to do these endless word salads. Like, why is it so hard for you to be human? Just answer the question. You don't have to talk in endless circles. I just don't get it. And I know her. Like, when I talk to her, she's fine. But when she does these interviews, she becomes like a android. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's like Sean, you're talking to me like a real full-blooded person. Why can't she just be that? We don't want to rehearse. We don't want to caricature as president. We want a human being that we can relate to.
Why do you think she can't? Do you think she is intimidated? Do you think?
There are several explanations. Some people say that she's just not that intelligent. It could be. Maybe she can't think on her feet. Maybe she relies on, talking points. But I had friends on her staff who tell me that she would get pissed at them for her own lack of preparation. Like, she would yell and she would get frustrated at them for her own inability to read the talking points and to internalize them. It's just, I don't know.
So we do need to move on because our time is short, but I'm trying to understand how it is that with this emphasis on the border, the numbers of crossings quadrupled under the first 3 years of the Biden-Harris administration. How did that happen?
There are a variety of factors that relate to what we have seen globally and what we are not immune from at our own border in terms of what we have seen in terms of surge of immigration and irregular migration. And there are solutions at hand, but we've got to have leaders who are solution-oriented, which we've been and are, and I am going forward, instead of leaders who want to make it a problem they can run on.
She definitely didn't seem quick on their feet, but I would still love to interview her. And I'm glad Joe, was able to set the record straight.
Yeah, and I'm here. I will give you as many names as you need in order to make the interview happen. Because I know her staff, and she will see your request. It's just a matter of her willingness, because she's so afraid to fuck up.
Yeah. What's she doing now?
She's deciding whether to run for governor in 2026 or try again for 2028. And I had someone, I kid you not, call me at 3:30 a.m. this morning.
Run for governor in California?
Yeah. Oh, she didn't call me, but I have a mega donor. She's the co-founder of two-factor authorization. She called me at 3:30 a.m. this morning saying the Democratic Party is in shambles. Yes, we already knew that, but coming from the horse's mouth, it was very important. And she was saying how nobody, there's not a single person of importance in the Democratic Party thinks that Kamala Harris should run again. But Kamala Harris is in her cloud of delusion. She still might run again in 2028 for president. So right now, the choice is whether to run for California governor in 2026 or president in 2028. And let me tell you something that the press doesn't know about. In order to run for governor in 2026, she would have to betray one of her closest friends because the current lieutenant governor is a woman named Eleni. She has a long Greek last name. Please don't make me say it. But she's the current lieutenant governor of California under Gavin Newsom. She is running for governor now. She's the current front runner. She's very close with Kamala. In fact, her cousin, Kristen Bertolina Faust, was Kamala Harris's finance chair. So for Kamala Harris to run for governor, she would have to stab her friend in the back. And I know this is important because it's a question of integrity versus ambition. Is she going to put her friend first or she's going to put her ambition first? And if I were to, I know Kamala and I would say that she would probably put her ambition first. Friendship is collateral damage for her.
Man, well, she'd probably be a shoo-in out in California.
I don't know. I think honestly, after the fires, I think the fires were a game changer and showed even Democrats that the entire party is just a party of fuck. Like even liberals understand that now. There's been a complete mood shift across Hollywood, and I have donors across Hollywood, across finance. They are fed up.
Wow. All right. Well, let's move in. We've got a couple things to cover first. So I have a Patreon account. There are top supporters. A lot of them have been with us since the very beginning. I started this thing in my attic, believe it or not. And then we moved here. Now we're building a new studio, and it's all because of them. But so one of the things I do is I offer them the opportunity to ask each and every guest a question. And so this question is from Eric Alger. Lindy, you're a strong advocate for progressive policies and frequently appear in the mainstream media to push your message. Conservatives often argue that media landscape is overwhelmingly biased towards the left, silencing dissenting voices. Given your platform and reach, do you acknowledge that there is a media bias problem? And if not, how do you explain the censorship and suppression of conservative viewpoints on major platforms?
I totally agree. Well, there's one element of that question that I'm gonna have to politely disagree with. I don't think I've never been an outright progressive. I'm progressive on the environment, but that's pretty much it. I want clean air and clean water, and I want to remind everybody that this is a fundamentally Republican issue. It originated with Richard M. Nixon. He started the EPA. All right, putting that aside, there is tremendous bias against conservatives across mainstream media, but I think the 2024 election was it's the moment when the crack the crack deepened and people realized that the facade was falling. The Democratic Party no longer, despite the entire array of the mainstream media, they still weren't able to perpetrate the lie that Biden wasn't in cognitive decline, that Kamala Harris wasn't a weak candidate. So finally, the scales are falling off of people's eyes, and they're realizing the mainstream media is in cahoots with the Democratic Party, and they're sick and tired of that. So I'm really glad that people like superstars like you, like Joe Rogan, and like so many, actually, you and Joe, just the two of you, and others in the podcast landscape, you guys are, putting the lie to the mainstream narrative. For example, the Hunter Biden laptop story. I'm here to be painfully honest, okay? I don't think the 2020 election was stolen, but I think it was rigged.
Mm-hmm. How do you think it was rigged?
Because the Hunter Biden laptop story was real as fuck. It was real. It wasn't Russian disinformation. The intelligence community lied, which is, I actually know Tulsi, I'll tell you why later, but she is right to question the conclusions of the intelligence community because these are the same people who told us that the Hunter Biden laptop story was fake. And the vast majority of Democrats are still going to tell you that it's fake. It's not fake. Mm-hmm. Even the Washington Post did a deep analysis of the contents of the laptop, and the Washington Post substantiated the validity of the laptop. Okay. And so the big guy, that's true. The 10% to the big guy, that's true. They checked out the metadata. It's not Russian disinformation. And you have people like Anthony Blinken lying on behalf of his boss. That is not okay. So it may not have been stolen, but it was rigged because that story should have gone out. The New York Post shouldn't have been censored. People on social media, people on Facebook and Twitter at that time, they should have been able to spread that story. And I am sorry. I'm sorry. I'm going to apologize. Okay. I'm sorry that I bought into it. I know Joe. Okay. And a part of me is still I'm sorry if you think I'm nuts, but a part of me still is going to love him for the rest of my life because of the kindness that he's shown to me. But now I know he's corrupt.
Well, we're going to dive into all that corruption. I know everybody out there has to be just as frustrated as I am when it comes to the BS and the rhetoric that the mainstream media continuously tries to force feed us. And I also know how frustrating it can be to try to find some type of a reliable news source. It's getting really hard to find the truth and what's going on in the country and in the world. And so one thing we've done here at Sean Ryan Show is we are developing our newsletter. And the first contributor to the newsletter that we have is a woman, former CIA targeter. Some of you may know her as Sarah Adams, call sign Superbad. She's made 2 different appearances here on the Sean Ryan Show. And some of the stuff that she has uncovered and broke on this show is just absolutely mind-blowing. And so I've asked her if she would contribute to the newsletter and give us a weekly intelligence brief. So it's going to be all things terrorists, how terrorists are coming up through the southern border, how they're entering the country, how they're traveling, what these different terrorist organizations throughout the world are up to. And here's the best part, the newsletter is actually free. We're not going to spam you. It's about 1 newsletter a week, maybe 2 if we release 2 shows. The only other thing that's going to be in there besides the intel brief is if we have a new product or something like that. But like I said, it's a free CIA intelligence brief. Sign up. Links in the description or in the comments. We'll see you in the newsletter. All right. Oh, and then lastly, everybody gets a gift here.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, a little something for the ride home.
This is amazing.
Vigilance League gummy bears made here in the USA. They taste amazing. They're not the healthiest, but they're
Thank you
gummy
so much.
bears.
Is this in your store? Everyone should buy them if they are.
Oh yeah, they're in the store, but they're always sold out.
Thank you. This is so kind.
You're welcome. All right,
Good.
so let's move on. So a little bit about you. Your great-grandfather was executed by the CCP, correct?
Yeah. And he wasn't even a major dissident. He just raised objections at a village town meeting. It wasn't even anything. It wasn't even anything important.
What did he do?
He just dared to, it wasn't even consequential enough to be documented. It was just, he disagreed with the local communist leaders and they just basically shot him.
Mm-hmm.
And so my dad grew up without a grandfather. And my dad was so poor that he had dirt floors. It's amazing that he managed to come to the West. It's amazing. He's the hardest working person I've ever met in my life.
So they immigrated to England?
I did, actually.
You did?
My parents left me 2 weeks after I was born and then picked me up when they were ready, and we went to Sheffield, England.
Wow. And then how'd you get to the States?
We did it the right way, and that is why I feel so strongly about illegal immigration. Let me tell you, it's illegal immigration. Why can't we say illegal aliens? Isn't that what they are? Like, enough of the euphemisms, okay? Democrats police our language, and it's ridiculous. These people are illegal immigrants. We waited for years to come here. We came here with $200. We never took a handout. We did everything the right way. We built our life through blood, sweat, and tears. And that is the way it should be. No one should be storming the southern border. Okay? Mm-hmm. We all had desperate lives. The CCP was literally killing us. So, it's just, We are not the trash can of the world.
It's interesting, though. I mean, I'm just curious because a lot of, you see a lot of people that come from communist countries or have roots in communist countries, China, Cuba, Venezuela. I mean, you go to South Florida, and Cubans are
Everywhere.
terrified
Yeah.
that the U.S. is going to wind up like Cuba, and a lot of the people of Chinese descent that I talk to too are terrified that the U.S. is starting to turn into communism in some way, shape, or form. And so, I'm just curious, what was the path to becoming a Democrat? Are your parents Democrats?
No, they weren't even really political.
They're not
Well,
political.
I grew up in suburban Pennsylvania, and that was Democratic. So my local congressman actually was a veteran named Joe Sestak. Have you heard of him? He was a 3-star admiral. And so it was almost by default. I interned for him starting at age 13, and then it was Obama. He was elected when I was 17 years old, so I was fully indoctrinated. I went to Princeton. It's like a very, very liberal bastion. Being a conservative there was a blemish. You just couldn't. I can think of like 2 conservatives, 2 Republicans. It was just not a thing you could do. It was the age of Obama. People were enthralled by him. So it wasn't an option to be a Democrat. I actually didn't realize until recently that I could be a Republican. And let me remind you, I live in Philadelphia, where there's this 8-to-1 voter registration difference. It's not okay to be a Republican. You're ostracized. I've lost all my friends, Sean. Friends. They were fake. I mean, I actually had someone berating me, someone whom I thought was a friend. He was texting me. He basically said, "How could you?" You can never reply to questions like that. So in my Instagram story, I replied to everybody. I was like, shaming me isn't going to change a single thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sean, I've
So you
lost.
kind of got groomed into it.
It just, there was no other option.
Yeah.
There were no other Republicans. Like, where were they? I lived in the collar counties of Pennsylvania. They're all Democrats.
Yeah. Okay. And so you interned at 13?
Yeah, I'm kind of weird. I had a really difficult childhood.
You did.
I did, yeah.
How so?
It's just tough being an immigrant kid. I love my parents, but it was tough. It was really tough. English is my second language. It's my parents' second language. I survived childhood by playing Chopin and Tchaikovsky and Liszt and Mozart and Beethoven on the piano for hours on end. That is how I survived. And who said it? Was it Nietzsche or somebody else? Somebody said it. Was it Nietzsche? He said, without music, life would be a mistake. And I survived by hanging on to music.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how did you interned at 13? You
And
ran
that
for
went on. It wasn't
Congress.
just 13, it's like 13, 14, like the entire time. It started then.
But so you had interest in politics at age 13.
Absolutely. Actually, and the people who guided me, it was a guy named Bill Walsh. He was also a veteran. He was part of the Navy. And he, even today, when I started exposing the Democrats and their corruption, he continually sends me messages saying how he's still proud of me. This is a Navy vet, you guys have always had my back. It's just, so yeah, I've always wanted to I had to change the world.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand? You're one of those people. I can tell. You just got to.
Yeah.
A normal life would be the greatest. It would be the worst fate.
Be kind of boring.
It would be the worst.
A lot of people like boring,
I can't.
But so then you move on, age 24, you run for Congress.
I was an investment banker at that time, Morgan Stanley.
You were an investment banker.
Yes, Morgan Stanley.
And then you ran for Congress.
Yeah, I hated Wall Street. It was so empty. I started, people just didn't really give a shit about anything but money.
Mm-hmm. And then how did you get involved in the White House?
Oh, I think I skipped a major part. Well, I was the first woman at Princeton to be elected president all 4 years, and that gave me the confidence to do whatever I wanted. Like I just
Okay.
knew that so at age 17, I was knocking on hundreds of doors and getting rejected and, spit on and vilified, but that gave me the resilience to just keep going. And let me tell you, Steve Carell, he was a graduation speaker that day for my graduation, and it was raining. It's online. On graduation day, the dean of the university told me not to give my speech because of the rain. I told Steve that. I said they're not going to let me give my speech. I've waited for this year for 4 years. And Steve told me, you're on live TV. If you go up, they can't pull you back down. So that's what I did.
Nice.
That day, I had won re-election as alumni president, so they had to call me up. And when I went up, I gave my whole speech, not a word except missing. And Steve was right. And I got a standing ovation because of that speech. And that was the moment I knew I was born to do this. This is what I was put on this earth to do.
Nice. And so how did you get involved in the White House? How'd you get connected there?
With the Biden White House?
Yes.
Well, I was also involved with the Clintons, and this is a long time coming. This is like a decade. So, wow, I've been involved with the DNC for like a decade. So
Okay.
people realized that I was able to deliver. I was a huge fundraiser. I helped with Pennsylvania. I'm a commissioner. The governor appointed me a commissioner of the Commonwealth. I'm really involved with him, Governor Shapiro. I raised millions of dollars for members of Congress, people like Senator Duckworth, who's also a vet. I know she came down hard against Hegseth, but I do want to give credit where credit is due. On a human level, she's a really decent person. You can choose not to believe me, but she is a decent person. And I'm sorry that she was so harsh on Pete. I cringed too.
So were you the primary fundraiser for the Biden-Harris campaign?
I was one of the top. I was the youngest member on their National Finance Committee.
How much money did you raise?
Tens of millions.
Tens of millions of
Tens of
dollars.
millions. And that includes a super PAC as well. There's a super PAC which raised about $1.5 billion.
Wow.
It's called Future Forward, and they totally fucked up. They should have responded to the trans ad, but they kind of just let Trump have it. And he's right. I don't want a president who wants to fund gender reassignment surgery for prisoners. Do you?
No.
Exactly.
No, definitely not. But so I want to get into kind of the meat of why you're here.
Yeah.
Biden's cognitive decline. And so you're basically coming out and saying that the cover up of Joe Biden's cognitive decline, basically it's not a conspiracy. He was declining, correct?
The conspiracy was a cover-up. That is conspiracy, and it was a years-long conspiracy, and it started escalating in 2022. His situation got seriously worse. I was on the trail with him in 2019. I went to San Francisco. I was actually with him the day after the debate. Do you remember when Kamala called him a racist? Do you remember that day?
No, but I remember in 2020, in parts of 2019, I don't watch any legacy media anymore. But at the time I did, because COVID was rampant. Obviously, it was the start of it. So everybody's glued. What's going on? What's happening? And at the same time, the debates were getting ready to fire up. And I remember Fox kept saying over and over again that this guy, he's not with it. Nobody's at the wheel. Nobody's driving this train. This is basically just describing what we all know is true. But I didn't buy into it. I was like, this has to be way over embellished. There's no way somebody would be running for president. And then I remember watching the first debate with my wife, and I saw him come up, and I saw him struggling to put a sentence together, and I was like, holy shit, this is real. And so, I didn't understand how anybody bought off on it from the first debate. I can't even remember exactly what he said. We're going to roll some of the clips during the interview of of how that went, but I mean, I thought it was very apparent right at the very get-go, debate one, that he wasn't with it. And so when did you notice?
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare.
Sean, I have to say that, again, I'm unlike the Democrats, I will take responsibility. In 2019, when the debates were happening, and into 2020, I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. He told me that it was a stutter and a speech impediment. So I was like, okay, all right, maybe it is. Maybe it gets worse with age. I'll extend him grace. And this is a guy who showed me tremendous kindness. I actually met him not through politics. I met him because I was a trustee of the American Association for Cancer Research. I met him in 2016. Okay, so I'd known him when I was 25. And because he showed me kindness then, I believed him. Like, I decided to, okay, maybe he just is tripping over his words, but this is a guy who still has control over his mental faculties. So in 2019, 2020, I didn't really think it was an issue. It just didn't really occur to me. And I wasn't watching Fox then. So it wasn't a narrative that I was exposed to.
You didn't see slow decision-making or inability to put, you chalk that up.
He remembered my dad's name at that point, which I thought was impressive because most people wouldn't. Like, and he doesn't like hang out with my dad. He just met him once. So I thought it was impressive. Maybe it was just good luck on his part that he happened to remember that my dad's name is Richard.
So, and then, you were a big fundraiser for the campaign too. So let's dive into a little bit of the campaign. Back then, there were all these, Trump had thousands of people showing up. Biden he didn't have anybody showing up. It didn't look.
Yeah, and I want to I don't think people realize this. In May 2019, when he was running for president the first time, I remember talking to a friend and saying, there's more press here than actual attendees. Like, what's going on here? This is in the middle of Philadelphia. It's a hugely Democratic city. Mm-hmm. The turnout should be much more robust than this. I thought it was just because it was hot that day. Like, Sean, I realize now that I was making so many excuses for him. But when someone is your friend, you really just want to give him the benefit of the doubt. But at some point, you realize that reality is just way too discordant with the narrative that they're presenting. So around 2021, 2022, I was like, okay, this is getting to be a little bit ridiculous. And
What was it that you saw? What did you see that was getting ridiculous?
I would be at private events and he would have a teleprompter at private events with like 10 people. This was not a major speech. And at private events where everybody wanted him to succeed. It wasn't an aggressive crowd. This was like a crowd of his top donors. Not only that, you would have Jamie Harrison, the DNC chair, pre-selecting questions and telling the rest of us basically to shut up. We weren't allowed to talk. And confiscating our phones. They confiscated my phone. Not only that, somebody, and he knows who he is.
Who is he?
He's Asian. They know who it is. He's no longer there.
We're here to drop names, Lindy.
He's not important enough to drop, He's like the civilian. He was big. If it's an important person, I will, like I did with Jamie. And I'm sure it came down from Jamie. He specifically asked me never to tweet anything about any of these events, never to post any pictures, never to post any Instagram stories. I had posted an Instagram story from a dinner with Biden. He pulled me aside very angrily and told me to take it down. It wasn't even a video, it was a picture. That's how tightly wound the operation got to be.
Why did they prop him up? Why was it him?
Because the alternative for them was so dire. The alternative for them would have been Kamala Harris, and they thought she was such a shitty candidate that they had to prop him up. And so it's just so ironic to me that within days she became the second coming of Jesus. Like everyone thought they didn't hate her. They just thought so little of her. Do you understand? Like they just didn't think she was capable of, litigating a campaign. And they were right. But
And none of the other candidates would have been
the thing
better.
about that, and I know
Wasn't Tulsi?
Tulsi by that time had gone off the reservation. She wasn't, to her credit, she left knowing that the entire thing was rotten. She left. That was good. Good on her. But people wanted to run against Biden, and they're not going to tell you publicly, but I'm going to tell you right now. They commissioned polls because they wanted to run against Biden, but given his name ID, no one could beat him. So pre-debate, Biden was still stronger than Shapiro, still stronger than Newsom, Whitmer, Harris, Buttigieg, right? So if they could have, they would have, but they couldn't. And the only dude who actually did, Dean Phillips, was a total loser, and no one knew who he was. He had zero name ID. But let me tell you, amongst the donor class, no one wanted a second Biden term. Nobody did. And so Jeff Katzenberg, the DreamWorks dude, he was the architect behind everything. He would invite top donors to the Oval Office and do tours and not ask for money in the White House. But the undertone was so abundantly clear. Come on, why do you think you're invited? And everyone who was invited on these tours was expected to write the max check, which is $938,000. That's the FEC limit. Mm-hmm. One person can give $938,000. But that's the limit for the campaign. But all bets are off for the super PAC. You can give as much as you want.
So back to what was it that? I mean, was it one event that you witnessed that you realized? And I think you said 2022 is when you started to see
late 2021, 2022. Things became undeniable in 2023. And that's actually when I started leaking to the press. This is the first time I said that. But yeah, I started leaking to the press, and you will see some of my background quotes in articles with a political reporter named Holly Otterbein. I basically said, this is crazy. This is nuts. He's not in any shape or form capable.
I mean, what was it though? I mean, we saw him falling down the steps of Air Force One. We saw him fall off his bike. We saw him go past Secret Service or the Marines or whatever, or just oh, I forgot the White House doors over here, and just kept walking.
And how he fell up the steps. Yeah. You saw that? But I was raising the red flag before all of that because of his inability to formulate thoughts. And also, the truth of the matter is that for the past 4 years, the White House has been run by his senior advisors and Jill Biden.
Mm-hmm. We'll get to that. But
and I will name the senior advisors.
But we will get to that. But I mean, did you have a lot of personal interaction with him while he was in?
And that's why it was so hard because, Sean, please don't judge me, but I'm here to be honest, and I loved the man. I still do because he was so kind to me, and I want to make it very clear this is not personal for me right now. This is our country, and the American people. It's so ironic that people are now blasting Elon for not being elected. But you know who else wasn't elected? The senior advisors who were running our country for the past 4 years while our president was just not present.
Mm-hmm. So what were these interactions like? Walk me through one. Walk me through the first one where you
Oh my gosh, I have a perfect one, actually. He had given a speech, and they usually put me in the front row so he could easily see me afterwards. He, usually would greet me like Lindy. He would remember my name. But one time he said, "Tell your husband I said hi." Sean, I don't have a husband. I just remember,
Wow.
Yeah, and he knows that.
What are some more?
I do think it's kind of like maybe it's just a quirk that he did remember my dad's name. Maybe it's I don't know why he just always did. Maybe it was just a one-off thing. It wasn't even the personal interactions that raised the flag. It's the way that he couldn't answer basic questions that were already pre-screened by the party. And I would just be waiting with bated breath for him to finish the sentence because he couldn't finish it. Like matters of basic American policy and how, for example, he would shit on our allies at private events. Like he called our ally Japan xenophobic. Japan is a critical ally. FYI, like in case you didn't know. This is an American president vilifying our ally just offhandedly because he forgot or whatever that you weren't supposed to do that. These are just like basic things you shouldn't be doing. Like, right? It's just he just didn't have it together. And
Were you part of the prep team?
I'm not. I'm proudly not part of the prep team because they fail the country.
And they would run him through these questions, I'm sure, time and time again before he actually gives a speech or has an event, correct?
Right. And the people around Bob Bauer, Ron Klain, his chief of staff, his first chief of staff, these are the people who are largely responsible for his prep or lack of prep or inability to absorb the information. And they had to, so he really liked handouts, like printed material, and everything on his printed material would be really big and graphic and colored, and there would be signs like stand here or like exit stage left. Everything would be abundantly clear. Like it would be like for kindergartner.
Wow.
And also you could tell that the president wasn't fully present because he completely neglected the people who put him there. This is just the messy part of politics. And Trump is great at that. He's great at taking care of his friends. And you need to do that because that's just the essence of politics. You had dozens of top donors, dozens of top supporters who were writing into the Oval Office saying, what the fuck is happening? Why are we being completely ignored? People who are still angry to this day that they were ignored by the Biden White House. Because the president wasn't there. He just wasn't. And so you had a bunch of 20, 30-year-old staffers running the show. Not only that, these staffers are basically nerds who are reliving their high school days by living out their fantasies in the most powerful residence in the world. And what I mean by that is they commandeer the White House social office and it's the coveted list, the invite list. They would invite all their own friends instead of inviting Biden or Harris's friends. And so they commandeered the White House social secretary list for their own benefit, political gain, rather than doing, executing the wishes of the president. And it got to be a serious issue that I helped to raise. We eventually rectified it. But you had a bunch of millennials and Gen Zers running the show.
Wow. So,
and you can tell by looking at the photos, it was the same group of people over and over again, the same cabal of far left influencers.
geez. So there was nobody at the wheel running this country.
The senior advisors. And do you want me to name them?
In a minute. But what I want to ask is, how did they intimidate you not to leak? You had mentioned.
Yeah, they did. Well, you remember with the policing of the photos and I was really, I'd raised $1 million for the event at which they told me I couldn't post anything and where they confiscated my phone. They put it in a Ziploc bag. And they didn't pull anybody else aside. They pulled me aside. I was really struck by that. And, but that was minor compared to what happened eventually. It got to the point, this is after the debate, it got to the point where it's like, okay, I really need to do something, not just to save the party, but to save the country, because Biden is in no way, shape, or form capable of being commander-in-chief. I told Shannon Bream from Fox News Sunday that I wanted to say this on the record. Politico publishes the names of the people who go on Fox News Sunday the evening before. And I guess they check that every night. The White House checks that every night. They called me the night of July 20th, and I have the receipts on my phone because I texted somebody.
Can we see them?
I'm going to show you right now, actually.
We'll put them up on screen.
Can we cover the person's name that I'm texting?
Yeah, you
Okay.
can airdrop it to us and we'll put it up on screen.
But let me show you now. So you know. Do you see the date, July 20th? The White House just called
Yes.
to babysit me.
Can I read it?
Oh, wait, leave out any private parts. Did I say anything private?
No. Are you still free to chat? Maybe text. Long day. Okay. This may be the most important day of my life. I still haven't fully figured out how to navigate telling the truth about Biden, learning, in parentheses, earning Fox's favor, and covering for the Biden, in parentheses, earning the White Houses. The White House called me today to babysit me. I got the message. They said that I'm the biggest defender of the president's. Yikes. What was the message? To hold the line, stay loyal. And in exchange, can I go down?
Wait, hold on.
I didn't even tell them, but Politico and Fox announced my appearance. Fox has been promoting it. They even cut an ad. I also have other issues.
Yeah, so do you understand what's going on here?
Tell us.
They called me the night before Fox News Sunday saying it was like a Tony Soprano move. Stay loyal. We know that you're the president's biggest supporter. It was the friendliest threat.
So what do you think they would have done? I mean,
Well, they did
pretty
what they
vague.
would have done. I've been banned from every event.
did you, I mean, so what I don't understand is, in essence, I think most Americans, country comes first, not party, correct? And so how many people inside the Democratic Party put the party over the country?
99.99%.
So pretty much all of them.
Everybody. I mean, they see I am the guinea pig. They
Why?
saw
Why is the party more important than the country?
because it's a religion for them. They don't have a religion, so it's become their religion. Wow, that's the first time I think that's really it. It's their entire lives. Sean, I'm telling you, I lost all my friends. I have nobody left other than my, actual friends. They've all left me. I used to get texts from senators, members of Congress on a daily basis, or even especially on holidays. I would get gifts in the mail. I got nothing this year. I got banned by the White House holiday party. I used to go to the VIP Naval Observatory party. I got banned by all of that. I got banned from calls. And what did I do? Like, I was treated worse than a low-life criminal. And I'm someone I don't even drink alcohol. Like, I've never done anything. I live the most straight edge life. And they treat me like I'm some crack dealer.
And what year was that? July 22, July 22nd of what year?
2024.
2024.
Yeah.
How long did you want to come out before that?
I already did. I told you that I was leaking to the press. Like, you can tell you can read my quotes if you just Google Holly Otterbean's political articles. I'm on background numerous times saying that Biden is too old to run. And there are members of Congress and senators who would tell me that Biden is too old to run, but they didn't have the guts to say so.
Jeez.
And one of them who told me that Biden was too old to run ended up being the chair of his campaign.
Jeez. So they have no courage whatsoever.
No courage, but they see what happens when you do have courage. I lost everything. And
What did you start leaking to the press?
2022,
What did you start leaking to the
the
press?
Biden couldn't run again.
Did you give specific examples?
They didn't. I
They
think
didn't ask.
if I did, it would identify me. And at that point, I wasn't. It's really hard to, as you know, it's like coming out of a cult. You just can't. It's really hard. It's like coming out of the Church of Scientology. They will do everything to discredit you, disown you, to destroy you. Sean, I hope my parents aren't gonna watch this, and I'm just gonna hope for the best here. But let me tell you, this has been one of the hardest periods of my life. And it's been so stressful for me. I no longer sorry, I no longer I have health issues because of this. I can't bring myself to say it, but maybe you guys someone can understand. It's been so hard. Like, what people call me a grifter, and that I earn money by doing this. I'm asking, like, who paid me for this? Like, you tell me. Like, where are my pay stubs? Who do you think paid me? Fox didn't pay me. Who paid me? Are you paying me?
I'm not paying.
No one's paying me. And so how am I a grifter when I'm exposing the actual grifters, the people who actually lied to the American people?
How did the press receive the information? I mean, it wasn't just DC the problem.
They chased after me. They were very happy to get my quotes.
They were.
Very happy, yeah. And they agreed with me. The entire, like, Politico, ABC News, all of these outfits I would work with, everyone thought that Biden was unfit. I don't know a single person who thinks that Biden was fit to run. I don't, other than James Clyburn, who, like, really drinks the Kool-Aid. I don't know of a single person.
Man, I mean, it took a long time for him to admit that. I mean, we just heard time and time again. I mean, didn't his doctor say, oh, he's the best fit president ever? And, I mean, who were his doctors?
Let me tell you something else. Jen O'Malley Dillon, his campaign chair, right? After the debate, she calls me and a few other donors. I'm in my 30s. I'm a marathon runner. I'm vegan. I live a very healthy life. She tells us on the phone call, she literally says, Biden is healthier than all of you. Don't worry about it. And it was a Zoom call, and I was texting other people on the call saying, what the fuck? What, did you just hear what she said? Does she think, like, is she stupid? Does she think we're stupid? How could she possibly say something like that?
Jeez.
And this is the same Jen O'Malley Dillon who issued that press release on election night saying that Kamala still had a path to victory. I was like, oh my God, these people are just completely they've lost it.
I mean, as far as cognitive decline goes, I mean, it's not just a Democrat issue. It's also a Republican issue. I mean, look at McConnell. Spaces out
At least
time after time again, doesn't know where he's at, having strokes on camera. Feinstein died in office. I mean, am I missing? There's probably more. Who am I missing? But, so, I mean, it was the president, and I think they definitely
Stakes are so much higher with the
propped him
president.
up. But, I mean,
It was a weekend at Bernie's situation.
jeez. So you didn't get any pushback from the left-leaning media? You were feeding them and they were chasing after you.
There was no pushback, yeah.
And what year did that start? That was also in 2024 or 2022?
Yeah. As soon as I realized, I felt like I had a responsibility to at least tell somebody. Like, if I wasn't going to come out and use my face, I needed to say something.
What outlets gave you the most?
Politico.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. Politico, Washington Post, ABC News, MSNBC, CNN. I worked with all of them. I've been blackballed by all of them now, too.
Why are you blackballed? They were chasing after you and now they've blackballed you.
Because I dared to ask questions about the Harris campaign. Someone high up at MSNBC left a comment on my Instagram the other day calling me nasty.
Wow.
Yeah.
So does the Democrat Party pay these outlets? How are they controlled?
Sean, I forgot to tell you an actually pretty important fact. So after I exposed Biden's cognitive decline on Fox News Sunday, they called me the night before. I already told you. They called me afterwards too. I didn't pick up. And they called me 3 times angrily. I don't pick up, but I can probably guess what they were going to say. They weren't happy. And that woman who called me, she was a woman who ended up being high up in the became high up in the Harris campaign and became a communications person for Harris. I think she was yanking me off of MSNBC every time I was about to go on, and they put on Ian Sams instead. The first time it happened, I was like, okay, that's just really bad luck on my part. I'll just write it off. But it kept happening. It happened 5 times, and I've documented it. Every time I would announce I was going on MSNBC, moments later, I would get yanked. And it would always be the same person who replaced me, and it would be the White House spokesperson, Ian Sams. And so I remember calling my mom. I was like, what is going on here? Like the first time, okay. The second time, there was a pattern and it kept happening. It got to the point where I no longer announced any of my appearances because I would summarily get yanked. I would get an email from MSNBC saying, hold up, either the White House or the Harris campaign has somebody else. We can't do you today. We're sorry. And so it never happened to me before I blew the whistle on the age thing, but it happened so many times afterwards. And it's like, it's so hard on you. It's really hard, and it's humiliating. I felt like shit. I felt awful.
Man, I'm going to ask you again, or I didn't ask you, but what health issues are you having from all the stress and all the blowback coming back from the Democratic Party?
I really hope my parents aren't watching these. They're strict Asians. I don't get my period. It's like a psychosomatic thing, so you can't be in a survival mode. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that.
Well, hopefully I'll get it back. Sorry if that's too much TMI.
Well, let's take a quick break. And then when we come back, I want to talk about who is actually running the White House.
Sounds good. Thank
Perfect.
you.
All right, Lindy, we're back from the break. We're going to get into some names here, but, just on the, 10-minute break that we took, guess what? Mitch McConnell fell down the stairs again. My producer, Jeremy, just found it on Twitter, right? So, dude, this is a huge problem. This is a huge problem.
United States of gerontocracy.
What? I don't know what. How do people keep voting this shit in? It's just mind-blowing on either side. It just doesn't make any damn sense to me at all.
It's name ID and it's money, the power of money. It's very alluring. It's really hard to go up against the hundreds of millions of dollars that Mitch McConnell can array time and time again. And that's how much it costs to run for Senate nowadays.
Yeah, but you see it here. You see, right now. You can do a podcast for free, and we crush the numbers of mainstream media. It's ridiculous.
That's why you're changing the game. Like in the past couple of years, you guys have redefined what it means to be a politician, where you need to be. Kamala Harris fucked up because she didn't go on your podcast, because she didn't go on Joe's podcast. And now they realize, too late. But you guys, you were right. You redefined the game in recent years, and it's going to be different. The power is shifting away from cable TV to people like you.
I'm just trying to humanize the candidate, find out who exactly they are, where they grew up, what their actual values are. And I think it's hard to it's hard to hide that in a 2-3 hour interview, even an hour long
Exactly.
interview.
You got things out of me that I would never have offered on cable TV. There's just no way I would have.
Tell me about Beyonce.
Despite her repeated denials, Beyonce was paid.
Who was she paid
to
by?
show. The Harris campaign. She was paid tens of thousands of dollars to not sing. Well, no, she refused to sing. She was paid tens of thousands of dollars to give a speech that no one wanted to hear. And Kamala Harris thought all of these people came out to Texas to hear her speak. Yeah, right. They came to hear Beyonce sing. And you know what? This is the second time they failed to deliver Beyonce. The first time was at the DNC. They promised that Beyonce would perform. Beyonce did not perform. So that was letdown number one. Letdown number two, they went to Texas to prop up this candidate who could never beat Ted Cruz, Colin Allred. And they told NBC News that Beyonce would perform. Beyonce came out and gave this speech, this boring ass speech, and just left without performing. And then Kamala Harris got booed. She got drowned in boos because people didn't really care what she had to say. They were there to hear Queen Bee. So that was number one. Beyonce was paid, show up. Cardi B was paid. Okay? Cardi B, who famously said she wasn't paid, her production company was paid to show up. Katy Perry was paid. Christina Aguilera was paid. These people were all paid. And Oprah wasn't paid $1 million. She was paid $2 million, okay? Let's be very clear.
$2 million.
$2 million to Harpo Productions. Who owns Harpo Productions? Flip Harpo backwards. It spells out Oprah. It's Oprah's production company. It was paid $2 million to put on that town hall in which Meryl Streep calls her Madam President. It was a love fest for Kamala Harris. So Oprah was paid $2 million. And who else? Al Sharpton was paid $500,000 moments before he interviewed her, okay? An MSNBC anchor, Al Sharpton, was paid money. A so-called journalist was paid money moments before he interviewed the vice president. People like Roland Martin, who are attacking me now, he was paid $350,000 to interview advertising costs, okay? Advertising costs, wink, wink, to interview Kamala Harris. The Pennsylvania Democratic Party was paid $25 million after the chair raised hell for not being paid enough street money. Street money is just a boondoggle. It's a cauldron of corruption. They just hand out money to ward leaders. And so this is how donor money was spent. Donor money was basically set on fire for 5-star hotels, luxury trips, private, charter planes, just this ridiculous stuff. And a lot of these donors are hardworking Americans. I had people giving anywhere from $10 to $15 all the way to $1 million. All of them worked hard for their money. And if they knew that their money was spent this way, they never would have given.
There's a lot of corruption coming out right now about USAID. Did they fund any of this campaign?
I don't think they funded any of the Harris campaign, but the Democrats are so pissed off and freaking out about USAID because Trump got it. He hit it on the nail. That's where the corruption is. And we need to look into what happened with that missing Ukraine money. All those billions that were supposed to go over there, and Zelensky said he never got it. What the hell happened to that money? Why are we funding transgender operas around the world? Why? Why are we funding DEI programs, not only here at home, but across the globe? Someone's got to answer for it. And you can tell that we hit the target by how angry they are.
Yeah. Man, I don't think what's it going to take for the Democratic Party to turn things around?
They have someone who wants to abolish the Second Amendment and ICE and who wants to defund the police running the party now. So I don't think they're going to be out of the woods for the next 10 years. I think it's going to be golden era for
I think they're going to have
conservatives.
to be honest with the American people and admit a lot of faults. And it's going to take somebody really tough to turn that around. But
I don't see anyone on the horizon, do you? And I went down the list, and I can tell you why all of the people they have. One last thing I'll say, Obama, at this point in 2004, 2008, everyone knew that Obama was going to run for president because he had given that famous DNC speech in 2004. Now, at this time in the cycle, there's no one of that stature, of that talent on the Democratic side. All right? They just have no one waiting in the wings of that caliber.
yeah, it seems like all the moderates have switched. Before one other question. You know, we were talking, I brought up Biden's doctors and how they said
Kevin
that
O'Connor.
what's his name?
Kevin O'Connor.
I've always wondered who it was. But, you know, there's a lot of people that think that he was basically doped up before he would get on TV or get on and give a speech or whatever. Is there any truth to that?
I only want to tell you things that I've seen with my own eyes.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that he likely took something for the State of the Union.
I was wondering because I was there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was there for that. And he seemed sharp at the beginning and then
Yeah.
kind of went
Yeah.
downhill there towards the
And-
end.
Like clockwork, all the Democrats are praising him to the high heavens for simply reading off the teleprompter. That's not a high bar to jump over, okay?
Yeah.
Anyone who has a rudimentary understanding of English can read off a screen.
Yeah.
It didn't require any impromptu thinking on his part.
So any rumors of, I mean, you were in there. Were there any rumors of him getting doped up, Adderall?
Oh, there were plenty of rumors, but Sean, I'm here to
Pro-visual.
give you the facts. Like everything I've said to you so far has been like proven, or I've seen it with my own two eyes. I've never seen him get doped up, but there were plenty of rumors that he would get doped up before every major event. Like, for example, after the debate, he went to North Carolina. It was basically it was a life or death moment for his campaign. He had to prove that he was still ready to continue his race. The rumor was that he took something. The night after the debate, he basically self-destructed before the eyes of the whole world. So the next day, he had to prove that he could still keep going. And that's what we were told, that he got some sort of injection or whatever before he went on stage in North Carolina. But I wasn't there to see that, and I don't want to, I can't say for sure. But
So even within the Democratic crowd, they knew something was going on.
oh, yeah, absolutely. Because it was night and day. His energy level, he would be like Pee Wee Herman in one moment and then just be like Mahatma Gandhi the next. Like it would just be night and day. His energy level, the delta between the two was just really significant. Yeah, it just, for example, the previous night, he was like, we finally beat Medicare. And the next day, he was like hollering on stage. It's like two different people.
Wow. So let's move into who was running the presidency for the last 4 years. A lot of people say it was Obama's third term. There's rumors of, and these are friends of mine that are moderate Democrats say that they thought it was Elizabeth Warren running it. They thought it was Bernie Sanders running it. But I think the general consensus, I think if you asked, the majority of the population, they think it was Obama's third term.
It was for sure Obama's third term. I don't think that's even a question. I don't think anyone, it definitely was. And that's why you saw Obama fighting for his dear life. Why was he fighting so hard in the fall? Because he was fighting for his fourth term. He was fighting for his own legacy. The relationship between Obama and Biden is most reminiscent of that between LBJ and JFK. JFK had little respect for Lyndon B. Johnson, but he picked him anyway because he wanted to win the South. He wanted to win Texas. But he had very little respect for LBJ's intellect. JFK was surrounded by his Harvard brain trust, and he had immense disdain for LBJ's Texas Hill Country vibe. And that was the same attitude that Obama had towards Biden. Obama thought that Biden would eventually fuck everything up. And that's eventually actually what happened. So But also, he didn't have much faith in Kamala Harris. Before she ascended to the top role, he was vetting people like Mark Kelly and Andy Bashir. Most people, most party chieftains didn't have Kamala Harris as their number one choice. But in the party of DEI, you can't skip a black woman. The optics would have been terrible.
So who is running it? Who are the names?
Steve Ricchetti, his senior advisor, Anita Dunn, Mike Donnellan, Ron Klain, Jeff Zients, Bob Bauer, his personal lawyer, who's actually his personal lawyer, who actually released a book basically grifting off his relationship with the Bidens. I'm going to get in so much trouble for saying all this. Please give me credit for. But these are the people who ran our country for the last 4 years.
So let's go through each name for all of the audience. Not everybody is as tuned in with who's who in the political world.
As a general overview, these are the people who made a living off of their connection with Biden. It's like they were leeching off the Biden name for decades, and all of them realized that they would never work for another president, so they had to ride the gravy train all the way through, and ride it to the very end. And that's why all of them refused to concede the truth, which is that Biden is unfit, and he would have been comatose by the time he was 86.
Who's the first name you mentioned?
Steve Ricchetti, the same guy who put his own kid at the Treasury.
Who is he? What's his position?
His most senior White House senior advisor. Like all of them are White House counselor or White House senior advisor. And they are the gatekeepers of the president.
Who's the next name?
Mike Donnellan, the same guy who's feeding, I'm just going to say it like it is, feeding Biden fake numbers telling him that he would win, he would beat Trump. Seriously, are you kidding me? And the truth of the matter is, by the time Biden was going to drop out, he was on track to lose the Electoral College by 400 votes. Trump was on track to get 400 Electoral College votes. Not a typo. I'm not misspeaking. 400 electoral votes by the time he dropped out. And Mike Donnellan, his pollster, whom they go back decades. By the way, the major qualification for all of these folks is that they know Biden really well. These aren't like PhDs or like rocket scientists or anything like that. It's just because of loyalty. And they've stayed with him for a number of years. So Mike Donnellan, Nancy Pelosi actually called him out. And she said, show me the numbers, Mike. Like, show me where you're getting these numbers that show that Biden can still beat Trump. And Donnellan wasn't able to deliver. No such numbers exist.
Who's the next name?
Who did I say? Anita Dunn. I actually have a soft spot for Anita Dunn because she got iced out of the Biden circle in July, August of this past year because she dared to say, maybe it's a good idea for the president to shy away from his convicted felon of a son because the optics aren't great.
Why do you have a soft spot for somebody who's running the country in the shadows to the ground?
Because she dared to speak up. She's the only one who did. She's the only one who dared to utter criticism.
But we went 4 years.
I know, but she's the only one who did anything a little bit different, And she got exiled. She got kicked out of the White House.
When?
So she's July. So she got booted out. And then not only her husband got booted out. Her husband, Bob Bauer, was Biden's personal attorney. So after Anita, so I should also mention that after the debate, Hunter basically commandeered the White House. He sat in on all the White House top-level meetings. You had a former cocaine addict sitting in on the most sensitive meetings of the most consequential and important government in world history. Does that sit right with you?
No.
Without security clearance, mind you. No security clearance. That's who was basically running the show. So Hunter basically battened down the hatches after the debate to make sure that his father would only receive intel that he pre-approved. And so Anita Dunn got exiled around this time, along with her husband. Her husband was playing Trump in the debate prep. Ron Klain was disgraced after the debate blew up. And then Jeff Zients, the person who's worth like hundreds of millions of dollars, the chief of staff. I should mention that the weekend that Biden made the decision to drop out, he only told two people in that circle, and that's that's Steve Ricchetti and Mike. He didn't tell Anita because I was on a call with Anita that morning and she had no idea it was going to happen. It completely caught her off guard. So by that time, they were already easing her out of the circle.
Is there any? Did we cover all the names?
Did we? Jill Biden?
Jill Biden.
She was like president. She was president. I was with Joe and Jill the night of the debate. I was at their VIP debate watch party. I slept all the way to Atlanta, Georgia for that, to show my support. Oh my gosh, Sean, you wouldn't believe it. So that night, I have the pictures too. I was with Joe, and so Jill takes Joe by the hand. The names are so similar, I'm sorry. Jill takes Joe by the hand on stage, and she's like, Joe, you knew all the facts. You answered all the questions. And you know that hand gesture that she does. And I'm thinking, you're treating him like a first grader. You know, like just because he, you know, like you shouldn't applaud him for doing the basics. And you could just tell that she was fighting for dear life to hold on to the vestige of power. And just a few days later, she was on the cover of Vogue. So the whole thing was a Jill Biden show. She was not as authentic as Joe, I want to say. I think as Joe got older, maybe you think I'm naive in saying this, but I'm not even sure if he remembers all of the corruption that he engaged in.
But doesn't surprise me.
Like, I don't think he had a full understanding what was going on.
I don't think anybody would argue that.
Okay.
And so when we say, was this Obama's third term, how was he connected with these people?
Oh, Jen O'Malley Dillon is an Obama vet. She became the deputy White House chief of staff. And she ended up running Kamala Harris's campaign because she gave Kamala an ultimatum saying, if the buck doesn't stop with me, I'm out of here. Because Kamala Harris has a history of putting her family in charge. People like Maya Harris, Mina Harris, and Tony West, the chief legal officer of Uber. When you put your family in charge, things, unless you're like Bobby Kennedy, like the original Kennedys, probably doesn't end well. Mm-hmm. And her 2019 campaign was a disaster. She was polling at 1%. She was a sitting U.S. senator. She didn't even make it to Iowa. That's how bad it was. And so Jen O'Malley Dillon was Obama loyalist. Her primary loyalty was to Obama, and she gave Kamala Harris that ultimatum. And then you had people like David Plouffe. So they helicoptered in Obama's people. They were running Kamala Harris's 2024 campaign like Obama's 2008 campaign. But the world has shifted since then.
Mm-hmm. And so would all these people congregate together and come up with the plan? I mean, the border, the Afghanistan withdrawal, the DEI, the LGBTQ.
Well, you got to keep in mind that a lot of these people hated each other. So when Harris ascended to the top, she pushed Donilon out. Okay. And Anita Dunn was never known to be, I'm trying to be euphemistic, it was never known to be a fan of Kamala Harris's. The Biden White House and the Harris office are two very distinct entities. They hated each other. Their staffers were constantly at war. And so these are two very distinct entities. Mm-hmm. And their interests often collided. Like right now, Vance and Trump, they're like, there's no daylight between the two of them. They're rolling in concert. That's not what happened at all. That wasn't the dynamic between Harris and Biden. From the get-go, things were rocky.
So where did the agenda come from then? Did it come from Obama through these people?
I think that's true. Also, it came from unelected, inexperienced, the 20, 30-year-olds that I was referencing earlier. People that none of us ever elected, people whose names you would never recognize, imposing their own vision of America onto everyone else. There was a huge I'm losing track of the letters, LGBTQIA plus contingency in the White House who sought to impose their own vision of wokeness onto the rest of us. And so you had the pride flags on the on the storied pillars of the White House.
Yeah. And man, this is crazy.
Like pride became their religion, you know? There's nothing wrong. I mean,
What about all the executive orders? Who was writing those up?
his senior advisors.
So they would just, all these different people, they weren't congregating with each other. There was no like collective agenda.
There was this one time
They were all out for themselves.
Yeah, exactly. There was this one time he signed an executive order, and someone in the crowd was asking him about it the next day, and he would have no idea what they were talking about. So it's just, he just had immense trust in his senior staff to execute his mission.
And what was he doing this whole time? I mean, he wasn't doing press
Napping?
conferences. Nobody had ever heard from him.
He's most active.
Going to bed at 8 p.m.
That's late. Well, he usually checks out by 4. So you're giving him extra credit. 8 is actually really ambitious for him. He's most active between 10 to 4. So the White House staff tries not to schedule anything outside of those hours. That's why he, face planted so hard at the debate, which is so late and out of his window of activity. He wasn't used to that. And all of us we've all had colds, right? No cold would result in that sort of debate performance. We don't lose our minds when we have a cold. That's no excuse.
So what's his daily routine? I mean, he's not writing the executive orders. He doesn't even really know what's going on.
He watches Morning Joe.
He watches Morning Joe. And then what? He just spaces out?
They don't really hold cabinet meetings. Like, I think they held one in the past year. We're lucky that disaster didn't strike. Disaster did strike multiple times, but we're lucky that something worse didn't happen, We're lucky that another pandemic didn't hit under Biden's watch.
I mean, I think a lot of things hit, We're funding terrorism.
Ukraine, yeah, you're right.
Ukraine. The border.
The border was an unforgivable mistake. Unforgivable.
Was it intentional?
Absolutely, I think it was intentional. Absolutely, because we have members of Congress in the Democratic Party who love migrants, who think that we should offer asylum to basically anyone who asks for it. These people, and I don't know why it's so controversial for people to acknowledge that yes, Democrats want these people to be potentially new voters.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a logical conclusion. Why is that controversial to say?
Is there
they would never admit that. But I mean, the DNC itself would never admit that, but there are a lot of members of Congress who openly are vouching for that. So,
was that the agenda? I mean, was that the talk behind the scenes? We got to get these people in to turn them into voters?
No, because the people at the DNC, at least at the top donors, they're kind of like limousine liberals. It's a different vibe. It's different from the activist level.
Okay.
There are different gradations. The people that I'm sorry if this sounds like elitist or anything, but when at donor events, they're venture capitalists, they're Silicon Valley,
Mm-hmm.
they're investment bankers. They're not thinking that way. But the activists, for sure, they want to open the borders. They don't want national borders. They don't give a damn about national sovereignty. They care more about people in Mexico than they do about American children. And why is it so controversial to want America first? Why is it bad to say that? I don't understand. I love this country so much. I'm so grateful to be here. In China, I would have been arrested already. So why is it so bad to want to put my country first, to take care of our people first? I don't want to be funding transgender operas in overseas. Why is it too much to ask?
I can't answer that. I don't know. Did he have any senators or congressmen in his ear?
He's very close with a guy named Chris Coons, a senator out of Delaware, actually. Yeah. Chris Coons is an interesting fellow.
So very influential to Biden.
Very, very influential. I think he was the single most influential senator during the Biden years. Who else? Chris Coons, it's the Delaware thing. And Ted Kaufman, who became senator when Biden became vice president, was also very close to Biden. He was also close to the author, John Meacham. John Meacham obviously was aware of Biden's cognitive decline, yet he still went on cable TV espousing the opposite. You had these people who supposedly, I'm going to get in so much trouble for saying this, but Sean, it's the truth. These people who supposedly, they embody the greatest pinnacle of American media and American journalism, all of them, almost without an exception, lied to the American people. Kamala Harris lied to the American people when she vouched for Biden's cognitive fitness, when all of them knew that he wasn't fit.
And so let's go back to, I'm trying to figure out how Obama was running the show, because you had pretty much said, yes, it was Obama's third term.
And he's the one who pushed Biden out too.
But we're also saying that all of the people that you just mentioned were not on the same page. It was very argumentative. They didn't like each other. And so if he was influencing all of them, it seems like they would have been on the same page.
I should also mention that these people are Obama people too. They worked for him. Like Anita Dunn was originally an Obama person. Jen O'Malley Dillon was an Obama person. So there's tremendous overlap too. But Obama was definitely, he continued to pull the strings up until the very end. He was the one who orchestrated the Clooney letter. Now, George Clooney is angry at Obama for getting him involved in politics because Clooney is getting a lot of pushback for everything.
Poor Clooney.
And so Obama is the reason why donors even gave. Like, let's be honest, Biden is no draw. I hosted Biden myself on May 1st at the Mayflower in D.C. I had to beg people. Sean, it got to the point where I was sending texts in like capital letters saying, please give emoji face. Like, please. Because my name was on the flyer. Like, I had to deliver, It was hard. It was so hard to make this out because people, you can't lie to the American people. On the whole, the wisdom of the crowds. The American people knew. You could see it, that this guy wasn't fit. It was like pulling teeth to get people to give. So finally, I was able to raise just $1 million, which is far lower than I usually do. But it's just.
So were these his agendas? Were these Obama's agendas that we saw roll out over the past 4 years? That's what I'm asking, because, I am a realist and I just want to know the truth. And so, like I had mentioned, like a lot of people think that it was Obama's third term, but then we have you saying that these people weren't getting along.
But that's not mutually exclusive.
If it was orchestrated, then from him, then it seems like these people will be getting along. And do you see what I'm saying?
It's not mutually exclusive because they didn't get along because they were all vying for the most power, like amongst themselves. They were vying for ascendancy amongst themselves, but they were still executing his agenda. Like Obama is what continues to be more forceful figure than Biden is. And he was the draw at fundraising events. He was the reason why people were showing up. Biden is no draw. Okay. So I was a co-host for an event that George Clooney and Julia Roberts hosted in Hollywood in June. People came for Obama. And I don't know if the press ever mentioned this, but that night, Obama himself was shocked to see Biden's decline. You could tell. And he was like holding Biden by the hand and shepherding him off the stage because Biden didn't know to leave the stage after the event was over. And you could just tell people in the crowd, like, looking at each other saying like what's going on, but everyone was playing their part in an emperor has no clothes situation because in their mind the alternative was so dire, and that is Trump. And if have you seen The Wire? You know that phrase, you come at the king, you better not miss. If you can't push Biden aside and you fail that attempt, the only person who benefits is Trump. So that was their logic.
Okay. So were they why are they so fearful of Trump? Are they worried that
They
we
think
saw
he's
these
a
executive
fascist.
orders come out? Does it have to do with protecting themselves? You know, we have the Epstein stuff that's hopefully going to come out if Cash Patel gets in. We have the
They
Diddy
think
stuff
that Trump
going
is
on.
on that list.
They think that Trump was on that list.
They pretend to hate Trump, but it's just a gag. It's just a show. It's a charade. You saw Obama yucking it up with him at someone's funeral, at Jimmy Carter's funeral. Democrats pretend to hate Trump. At the end of the day, they crave him. They're obsessed with him. They need him for their fundraising machine. They need him for their raison d'etre. Without Trump, they would have no rudder. They would be even worse off than they are. Trump is their lodestar. It's their reason for existence. They're obsessed with the man.
So they're not trying to protect themselves.
They have no other reason to exist at this point because their party is just this. It's just their party basically. It's in shambles.
Let's talk about the executive orders that came out at the very end.
Terrible. Terrible.
So who orchestrated that? I mean, who was on there? It was Fauci was on there.
Yeah.
There was Milley was on there. There was the J6 committee was on there. Am I missing anybody?
His entire family.
Yeah, that was the first run. That was
Okay.
what, the night before, and then what it was like an hour or two before.
And by the
And
way,
it was his entire family.
exactly. So I called. I predicted that on. I told people months ago that this would happen. By the way, I went on Times Radio and I said this, and it happened exactly the way I said it would. He would pardon his entire family, James, Valerie, Biden, Owens, everybody, because all of them were involved in Hunter's business, and James Biden was involved in a failed hospital network situation. And I want people to know that it extends all the way back to 2014, the start of the Burisma situation in Ukraine. So the whole thing is sprawling. The entire family enterprise was influence peddling. Like everyone was in on it, essentially, except Ashley. She's out there doing her own thing. I actually personally really like Ashley. I know her, she's my fellow Philadelphian. She's not really involved in anything. She's recovering from, she's a recovering addict. She's just doing her own thing. But everyone else is involved.
So who orchestrated? Let's talk about the families first. Who did that come from? Jill?
It's an influence to the intelligence of the American people that Joe Biden pretends that he had nothing to do with it. Joe Biden had everything to do with it. Flying his son on Air Force Two to China? Like, do you think we're stupid? Like, seriously? Really? If you gave me $1 million, I wouldn't even go back to China.
But did he know? Did
Oh,
he
absolutely.
understand?
He
Did Joe
absolutely
Biden know what was going on? Or
Absolutely, he knew.
Okay.
Absolutely, he knew. And he used his addict of a son as his bag man.
so he was with it enough to orchestrate.
Because
all of
this started when he was vice president in 2014, like the 2010s. He was definitely with it then. This is the year when he was debating Paul Ryan. He did a good job. Didn't he do a stand-up job with Paul Ryan? You know that debate?
I don't remember that
Okay.
debate.
Actually, he did a decent job in 2012. He had control of his faculties then. When I first met him in 2016, he was fine too.
What about Fauci?
Oh man. I love how Fauci's like, I need taxpayers paid security, and it turns out to be like this valet whole shebang, like the whole operation and like limousine and everything. Like Fauci, you made enough on your own. You can pay for your own security. Why are you charging us? How much is he charging us a day?
Well, what I'm asking is, did Fauci get to him, and did these people ask for the pardons?
Oh, I don't know what I'm not in touch with that. I can't speak to what Fauci did, but I do know that he was Biden was under tremendous pressure to pardon like everybody.
Who was pressuring him?
The members of Congress, especially you had the squad, people like Ayanna Pressley, AOC, begging Biden to pardon like death row murderers and letting out all the cretins of the world. It's just like, this is just, I live in Philadelphia, okay, where crime is seriously rampant. This is what happens when you have liberals running the show. You have criminals on the streets and crime's not being prosecuted. And we're all about receipts, right? And one of the reasons why I actually turned conservative, Sean, I was just standing on the curb and I got pelted by rocks. And I started bleeding and I was bruised. And I couldn't say a single thing because I'm Asian. And the people perpetrating the crime were Black Americans. And I would be labeled as a racist if I said anything.
That's why you turned Republican?
I mean, it wasn't like I didn't like decide the next day I would be Republican, but just so you know, I do want to pull up that it just, the Republican Party is the only group of people who are willing to admit that there's Black on Asian crime. You're not allowed to say that as a Democrat. Because in the Democratic Party, they would label me, the victim, as the person at fault, and the perpetrator as the victim of some imagined grievance, someone in need of a reparation or whatever. And all I did was stand on the curb. Actually, I was so stunned I couldn't even react. And it wasn't the first time. It happened to me 2 times afterwards. There was nothing I can do. I filed a police report, but there's nothing I can do. And just so you know that this happened,
What's this?
I sent it to my therapist actually right after it happened.
This is from you. Hi, Lauren. I was just walking to get my dinner. A group of teenagers started pelting rocks at my head. I am now bruised and crying. Do you have any thoughts on how to move past this? Thanks so much. Hope you're well. Please feel free to respond when you're back in the office. No need to rush. Just needed to send this as this just happened and I'm shaken. A million thank yous.
And so this is just randomly, this just happened to me, just standing on the street in the middle of Philadelphia. And it's it's a Democratic run city. And this is what happens when you have a George Soros funded prosecutor governing our city.
Yeah.
They've done so much damage. The Soros prosecutors, not only in my city, but San Francisco, Los Angeles, across the country.
Yeah. And they defund the police movement. I mean,
Yeah.
What are they going to do? You know, what are they going to do? They have nobody to back them.
And now the person who wanted to defund the police is running the DNC. So yeah, things are going well.
Genius move.
Exactly.
So is that, I mean, what other values or, I mean, is there anything else? I mean, just looking at it from a different perspective. I mean, you've been demonized, you've been ostracized from the Democratic Party. You've lost all of your friends. I mean, are you looking for acceptance in the Republican Party because you have nobody? Does that have a play in
The
this?
Trump team already reached out to me. I was appointed to the inaugural committee. They were incredible. The chair of the RNC, Casey Crosby, she's incredible. She's treated me with the utmost kindness and graciousness. It's been unbelievable. I want to give a shout out to her because she's treated me with more decency in a day than Jamie Harrison did my entire life. It's just, I'm like on a different planet.
But let's just take all the acceptance and decent people out of it. Let's just talk about, what is it about conservative values that draws you into the party?
I've always been conservative, but I've had to hide it. And I was trying to tell, and I'm on record, even 5 years ago, I'm on record telling people again and again that I'm a conservative Democrat. I grew up as a Christian conservative. I went to church every Sunday. I went to youth group every Friday. Even today, I read the Bible every night in my battered King James version of a Bible with a calendar in the back. Faith is such an important part of my life. It's always been, I'm just conservative. I'm also Asian. I can't get away from that. We're just a conservative culture, socially conservative, fiscally responsible. I grew up with nothing. My first job was at Wawa, the hoagie shop, making $9 an hour. My parents had nothing, and we built something magnificent out of it. We've created hundreds of American jobs over the years.
Do you feel like you've lied to the American people through the concealment of Joe Biden's cognitive decline?
No, because I tried. As soon as I realized in 2022, I started telling the press.
And so,
I have a paper trail of that.
as we kind of close this interview out, what do you have to say to members of the Democratic Party who were a big part of that lie, who did not have the courage to speak up or say anything, still to this day?
You failed the American people. Shame on you. Shame on you. You had one job, to protect the American people, and you failed abjectly at it in order to preserve your own position. And it's just something that you can never get. We're never going to let you live it down. And you sought to destroy people like me and others who dared to tell the truth, who dared to buck the party line. Because in this cult, you can't ask any questions. You can't utter any criticisms or any divergence from the party line. And because of their lies, the Democratic Party has been discredited for a generation. Like, good fucking luck getting out of this.
It's going to take a lot of work.
It's going to take a hell of a lot of work. And it's not just the lie about this. It's the media manipulation of Kamala Harris, too, from the worst and most poorly rated vice president in American history to somehow the second coming of Jesus in a matter of days. Like, did you notice that? Like, we went from being, who is she? To, oh my God, she's like this megastar.
Oh, yeah, I saw it.
Within days.
Yeah. Well, Lindy, I really appreciate you coming. And do you have any more aspirations?
Can I just say, I've watched so many of your interviews, and you are a national treasure. You truly are. You're just really good at this. You are like, I don't know, you're some sort of, you have what it takes to get people to really open up and divulge their innermost thoughts. It's a very rare talent. And I'm so glad that you're here. This country is lucky to have you. And I just want to say that the balance of power is shifting away from legacy media and is shifting towards people like you. So please keep going.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Well, Lindy, best luck to you.
Thank you so much.
No matter where you're watching Sean Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.